We live in a world where mirrors surround us on all sides. They are in shop windows, on cell phones, in the eyes of others who evaluate us without words. And often the reflection we see is not just our own. It is distorted by comparisons, by the desire to be someone we are not, by the weight of the expectations that surround us. Beyoncé, one of the most emblematic figures in music and pop culture, also faced these mirrors. On her journey, she came across envy, vanity, anger, greed, gluttony, laziness, and lust, the 7 deadly sins that, in subtle and blatant forms, haunt us throughout life. But instead of getting lost in them, she transformed them. She learned to use each one as a portal to something greater, transcending her shadows and redefining her impulses. This story is not just about Beyoncé, it is about all of us. Envy is a treacherous mirror. It makes us believe that something is always missing, that we will never be enough. Beyoncé grew up surrounded by comparisons, by imposed doubts, by voices that told her that she needed to be better than others in order to belong. The entertainment world tried to turn her into a constant competitor, a distorted reflection of other people's standards. But instead of letting herself be consumed, she shattered that mirror. She understood that she did not need to fight for a space that was already hers. When she accepted that her uniqueness was her greatest strength, her presence became unshakable. By transforming her journey into art, Beyoncé helped others see that true belonging starts from the inside out. For years, the world saw Beyoncé as a symbol of perfection. But what few realized is that the relentless pursuit of an ideal can become a prison. Vanity creates the illusion that we need to be flawless in order to be loved. But true beauty lies in authenticity, and it was this understanding that set her free. Over time, Beyoncé learned to look at herself with love, without demanding unattainable perfection from herself. She understood that strength lies not in appearing flawless, but in being true. This was one of the most profound legacies she left, the awareness that we do not need the world's approval to love ourselves. Anger can be destructive, but it can also be a spark for change. Beyoncé knew anger at injustices, at comparisons, at the limitations imposed by a system that often did not value her. But she chose to channel this emotion into something greater. Each beat, each choreography, each verse of her songs carries the energy of a silent revolution. It is not about shouting, but about creating, about transforming pain into art, about using anger as fuel for freedom. She showed that it is not the absence of anger that makes us free, but the way we choose to use it. She could have kept it all to herself. She could have closed herself off in a personal empire, accumulating achievements without sharing. But Beyoncé understood that true abundance lies in sharing. Her success was never just about herself, but about lifting others up alongside her. She taught us that generosity is an act of multiplying, not losing, that giving away knowledge, opportunities, and inspiration is the purest form of wealth. Because material goods can be accumulated, but the impact we leave on the world is what truly lasts. The desire for more can be dangerous when it becomes insatiable, but Beyoncé transformed her hunger into curiosity. It wasn't just about wanting more hits, more fans, more money. Her appetite was for growth, for learning, for constant reinvention. She threw herself into the unknown, learning to master every aspect of her art. Her gluttony was not for accumulation, but for evolution. And that's the lesson she leaves us with. If we're going to be hungry for something, let it be for what makes us better. How many times do we stop taking action because the path is difficult? How many times do we prefer the comfort of stagnation to the pains of growing up? Beyoncé could have given in to exhaustion. She could have slowed down and settled down. But she chose another approach. She found fun in the effort. Working hard doesn't have to be a burden when we find joy in the process. Discipline can be light when we fall in love with the journey. This is one of the greatest lessons we can learn. Persistence doesn't have to be painful. It can be a dance. The world teaches us to seek excess, to believe that pleasure is outside of us. But Beyoncé showed us that true luxury is the security of being who we are. Her sensuality was never about trying to please others, but about the absolute confidence in her own presence. She taught us that the greatest pleasure is not in external approval, but in the freedom to be true to ourselves. When we stop seeking validation, we find a security that no excess can give us. Each of us carries these 7 mirrors, but Beyoncé showed us that they don't have to imprison us. We can break them, give them new meaning, and transform their shadows into light. In the end, the reflection that matters is the one we choose to see. From an early age, Beyoncé learned that the entertainment world was an arena for comparisons. She grew up being told she had to be better, prettier, more talented, as if perfection was the only path to success. When she was still a member of Destiny's Child, the media constantly compared her to her bandmates, as if each achievement she achieved was a defeat for the others. At the beginning of her solo career, the same critics who praised her also placed her alongside other artists, insinuating that she needed to surpass them in order to remain relevant. These external comparisons planted an internal doubt. Am I enough? Envy began to emerge not as a desire to tear someone down, but as a mirror that reflected only what was missing. The industry fueled this silent competition, making even Beyoncé question whether she had to be someone else in order to be accepted. But it was at this moment that she did something different. Instead of losing herself in the gaze of others, she chose to build her own identity. She realized that she didn't need to fight for a space that was already hers. It wasn't about being better than someone else. It was about belonging to herself. Beyoncé broke the mirror of envy and saw her own reflection, not as a sketch of other stars, but as a unique constellation. When she released the album Lemonade, she transformed this journey into art. Her lyrics and visuals showed a woman who understood her pain, her weaknesses, but who above all took ownership of her own story. It was there that millions of people recognized themselves in her. The moment Beyoncé found her belonging, she allowed others to find theirs too. In the spotlight, Beyoncé was always seen as flawless. Her talent, beauty, and poise made her an icon, a global reference. But what no one saw was the weight of this image. The more fans and the media praised her, the more she felt the pressure to maintain this unattainable perfection. Vanity, often confused with self-love, began to become an invisible prison. Behind the scenes, the mirror reflected her insecurities. Was her voice strong enough? Did her appearance meet expectations? Would the world love her if they saw her imperfections? Vanity disguised itself as power, but deep down it was just fear. Fear of not being accepted if she wasn't perfect. It was then that Beyoncé realized that true self-love didn't come from applause, but from acceptance. She didn't need external validation to know her worth. Like a child who looks at herself in the mirror with wonder, without worrying about judgment, she decided to see herself through the eyes of love, not criticism. Over the years, her transformation has become evident. She has stopped chasing perfection and has started embracing her authenticity. If before her image was always meticulously controlled, today Beyoncé is not afraid to appear without makeup, to show the behind the scenes of her life, to be human. Her self-love no longer depends on the adoration of others, but on a deep connection with herself. And it was this change that inspired millions, because, in the end, vanity can create a mirror that imprisons, but self-love shatters any reflection that does not show the truth. Beyoncé has always been seen as a controlled, elegant, almost unshakable woman, but behind this image there were moments of fury, frustration, and revolt. From the beginning of her career, she faced harsh criticism, devaluation, and the weight of being a black woman in an industry that often did not recognize her greatness. The anger grew in silence. There was anger at the unfair comparisons, at the double struggle to prove her talent, at the pressure to be perfect while others could fail without major consequences. But Beyoncé knew that shouting to the world would not always bring change. So instead of letting her anger consume her, she transformed it into art, into strength, into revolution. Her album Lemonade was one of the most striking examples of this. There she channeled her pain and indignation into songs that spoke of betrayal, racism, empowerment, and resilience. Every beat, every lyric, every image was a cry for freedom. Beyoncé did not become a hostage to anger. She used it as fuel for her silent revolution. This choice was liberating. Instead of losing herself in bitterness, she found power in expression. And she showed the world that anger doesn't have to be destructive. When directed wisely, it can break chains, open paths, and transform lives. Beyoncé taught us that true freedom comes not from the absence of anger, but from the ability to use it to create something greater. Because in the end, the fire of anger can consume, or it can light a new path. In the entertainment world, the logic is often simple. The more you have, the more you want. Power, money, success. It's easy to get lost in the relentless pursuit of more. Beyoncé could have followed this path, hoarding wealth and keeping it all for herself. Instead, she understood that true abundance lies not in hoarding but in giving. From an early age, she saw that success was not just about earning but about giving back. Whether it was supporting young talent, funding scholarships for Black students, or investing in social projects, Beyoncé has always used her position to uplift others. She realized that her greatest wealth was not in what she had, but in the impact she created. One of the most symbolic moments of this mindset was the Beyoncé, her historic performance at Coachella. There, she not only shone alone, but brought to the stage a celebration of Black culture, with references to historically Black universities in the United States and performances that celebrated her roots. She could have made a show all about herself, but she chose to share the spotlight and turn her performance into a cultural movement. The real reward came not only in the millions she earned, but in the inspiration she left for generations. Beyoncé showed that generosity is not an act of loss, but a gesture of multiplication. True power lies not in what is withheld, but in what is shared. Because in the end, greed builds empty castles, while giving builds empires of meaning. Gluttony doesn't always manifest itself at the dinner table. Sometimes it emerges as an insatiable appetite for more success, more awards, more recognition. At the height of her career, Beyoncé could have let herself be consumed by this incessant hunger. But instead of losing herself in an unbridled desire for more, she channeled that energy into something much greater: curiosity. From a young age, Beyoncé was never content with just being a good singer. She wanted to understand every detail of the music, the production, the choreography, the creative direction. Her desire to learn made her a well-rounded artist who mastered all areas of her art. It's not just about wanting more, but wanting to be more. When she decided to direct her own projects, such as the visual album Lemonade and the documentary Homecoming, she didn't need to outsource her vision because she had already studied, observed, tested. Her appetite for knowledge led her to constantly reinvent herself. While others settled for what they already knew, Beyoncé always ventured into the unknown, experimenting with new styles, exploring new narratives, challenging herself with each new era. This hunger for evolution has kept her at the top for decades. And more than that, it has inspired millions of people to never stop learning. Beyoncé teaches us that true gluttony is not in accumulating achievements, but in keeping alive the curiosity that makes us grow. Because in the end, those who are hungry for success can end up insatiable, but those who are hungry for evolution find an endless feast of possibilities. The world sees Beyoncé as a tireless work machine. Exhaustive rehearsals, global tours, visual albums that take years to perfect. But what many don't realize is that, like every human being, she also had moments when laziness could have won. After all, after so much success, why continue challenging yourself? Why not just sit back and reap the rewards of what you've already built? The answer was in the way she viewed effort. For Beyoncé, discipline was never a burden, but rather a dance. Since he was a child, his relationship with work has always been linked to fun. When she was still little, when she practiced choreography in her living room, she didn't do it out of obligation. She did it because she loved it. When I first stepped on stage, it wasn't about impressing, it was about feeling the magic of the moment. And that essence has never changed. Even in the most difficult moments, when her body and mind wanted rest, she found ways to turn fatigue into a game. Behind the scenes at Homecoming, Beyoncé revealed that after the birth of her children, She had to relearn how to dance, sing, and connect with her own body. The process was arduous, but she saw it as a journey of rediscovery, not a punishment. The great lesson she teaches us is that discipline doesn't have to be a burden. When we find a pleasure in the process, the effort ceases to be a burden and becomes part of the spectacle. And perhaps that's the secret behind her longevity at the top. Beyoncé never saw work as an obligation. She turned it into art, into expression, into fun. Because in the end, laziness holds us back, but the joy of doing what we love sets us free. Lust isn't just about physical desire. It's also about the urge to indulge in excess, the temptation to lose yourself in the gaze of others and to live only for the approval of others. In the world of entertainment, where image is everything, Beyoncé could easily have fallen into this trap. She could have shaped her career to please the public, followed passing trends, and given in to industry expectations. But instead, she chose a much rarer and more powerful path: the pleasure of being authentic. From the beginning, Beyoncé understood that true sensuality was not about exposing more than she wanted, but about having complete control over her narrative. Her freedom came not from the need to be desired, but from self-confidence. When she released Partition, for example, her approach to sensuality was not about catering to the male gaze, but about celebrating her own body from her perspective. In Lemonade, she stripped herself emotionally bare, exposing her pain, frustrations, and rebirths, not to shock or sell more, but because it was her truth. This confidence made her unshakable. While many artists lost themselves trying to live up to imposed standards, Beyoncé redefined her own standards. Her sensuality was not just in her body, but in her voice, her presence, and the way she commanded a stage without having to prove herself. True luxury was never the sparkle of her jewelry or dresses. It was the freedom to be exactly who she wanted to be. Beyoncé teaches us that the greatest pleasure comes not from external validation, but from the unshakable love for who we are. When we feel secure in our essence, we don't need excesses to be great, because in the end, lust can make us hostage to the approval of others. But true freedom is finding pleasure in our own authenticity.